Hello and welcome everybody to this post-draft special here on the Barroom Network. John Buffone here with you. Another draft in the books. Ryan Pace making moves, moving up, moving back, getting a quarterback, getting protection, feeling some needs. We're here to break it down, and I got two great guests on the network right now. Montel Hardy, he's a draft analyst for Bear Report, and Jacob Infante, a writer for Windy City Gridiron and the Draft Wire. Gentlemen, how are you doing? How are we feeling? Another draft in the books. And we're all muted. Montel's muted for some reason. I don't know why he's muted. Jacob, how you feeling?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's been a real busy pre-draft process, and obviously, with all the trade-ups and everything, it's been a really wild couple of days. But I'm happy. I'm definitely happy. Just that the draft is over with, and also the fact that the Bears came away with a haul that I really like. So overall, doing pretty solid.
Yeah, that's just what I was. Yeah, that's just what I was about to say. I think they got a whole lot better today, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think you saw just a really a lot of like large steps towards using metrics to decide what you do, and also just some really good tape. So I do think they got a lot better. Yep.
Now, we all talked about Justin Fields and Tevin Jenkins. That was day 1 and 2. But let's talk a little bit about day 3. There were some interesting moves that they go up, they move back, and they make some trades, but they also fill some needs. And Jacob, I want to start with you because you have kind of this Mizzou connection here, and they take Larry Borom, a guard out of Missouri. Now, they said that he can maybe move either inside, outside, but you know him, you talk to him. What can the Bears fans expect with Larry Borom?
Yeah, so with Larry Borom, I see a guy who played primarily at tackle at Mizzou, but I honestly like him better as a guard at the next level. I think that he's a big-bodied dude. He's thick and well-built, and he's powerful at the point of attack. He does a really good job of driving his legs when he's engaged with guys, and he's not afraid to get a little nasty and block with a little bit of that mean streak. And when I watch Larry Borom, sure, I think he's a bit raw. I feel like there are some instances where he can improve in terms of pad level. And there are times where it doesn't really seem like he knows entirely what he's doing. I mean, he started playing football in his freshman year of high school. So he's pretty relatively new to football in terms of, guys who've been playing this their entire life. But I like the pick, honestly, because he's a guy who's powerful, pretty good athlete. I think he can get a little out of control at times, but the raw acceleration he brings to the second level is pretty impressive to me for a guy that big. So overall, I'm a fan of the pick. I think he's better suited at guard because when you ask him to do a little bit more moving in space, that's when things can get a little bit messy. But I like the move. He's a versatile guy who can play, pretty much anywhere along the offensive line. And I think in the 5th round, that's a pretty good investment.
Now, I do want to ask you, you talked about him in the inside. How does that relate to possible playing time with the Bears? Now, it would obviously depend on the formula they're going to go with. If they're going to stick with Mustipher at center and then Daniels and Whitehair at guard, maybe he's a depth piece, or if they could maybe he could be a swing guy. What do you see his role, if any, moving on with this roster in 2021?
Yeah, so in 2021, I see Larry Borom as a backup, honestly. I think that the offensive line, whether they're going to – I think the big issue is who they're going to put at center. I should rephrase that. Not necessarily the issue, but more of a question. Because you got Sam Mustipher there who was solid in 2020, but is he really a guy you want to have, starting there long-term? Has he proven enough there yet? I'm not so sure quite yet. But I do think that Mustipher is going to be the center, and then they'll have Whitehair and Daniels at guards. But then Borom being the kind of guy, I think he can step in primarily at right guard. I like him there. And then if, say, Charles Leno or Tevin Jenkins goes down with injury, then it's, I can see him stepping in at probably more right tackle. I think left tackle, you could kind of defer to Elijah Wilkinson. But I feel like the 2 tackle positions fairly similar. There are some technical differences there in terms of pure technique and just the ability to, adjust your pass sets in different directions. But yeah, I think that Larry Borom's more so a guard who gets more playing time if one of the guys goes down in the starting lineup. But that's where I see him right now. I think that primarily we're looking at him as a backup.
Now, Montel, we moving on to the 3 picks in the 6th round. They go out and they get Khalil Herbert, running back out of Virginia Tech. They get Daz Newsome, a fun receiver out of North Carolina, and then Thomas Graham, the cornerback out of Oregon. These are some value picks, and a lot of Bears fans are, they're already digging into what these guys bring to the table, or what they're looking at highlights. They're looking at the sizzle tapes of these guys. Out of those 3 picks, or I should say, which one of those kind of stands out to you as someone that could potentially, make some plays for the Bears in the short term?
I definitely think it would be Daz Newsome out of the gates. I'm really glad they decided to go and get someone that can compete. You look at Wims, Ridley on the roster, both those guys, I think they're kind of taking up space at this point. So if they can't compete to become stars, I think someone needs to push them off the, down the depth chart a little bit. I think Newsome can be that guy. Good burst, change of direction. He's good over the middle, catching the ball in traffic. I also like his ability to block. He's an above average blocker. So you combine that with his skills. He comes out a decent route runner. Didn't test particularly well. One of the stiffest receivers to ever test in the last 20 years. But he moved the chains consistently for North Carolina. I think that's something the Bears can get from him.
Now, what kind of, I should say, his role within that receiver core, because we don't know if Mooney's going to be on the outside. Obviously, A-Rob's got his position nailed down. And then we don't know if Anthony Miller's either going to be on the roster moving forward. Is this a guy that they're going to put on the slot, or does he need to be on the outside?
Definitely an outside guy for what he can do as a blocker. And just, you don't want him, against a loose hip nickel corner, because that guy he should be able to cover. Ideal matchup is him versus your boundary corner. That's going to be a guy that can go vertical, but not necessarily, change direction as well as some of the corners on the team. So I would expect Daz Newsome to get money against those type of guys. Like I said before, if you watch some UNC tape, some of the fans listening, you're going to see Diami Brown go over the top, take the top off the defense. He's going to do some of those fun things up top. But whenever the chains needed to be moved, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, crunch time, he needed, 7 yards, 8 yards. It was definitely Daz. That was the guy for him. So I really think he can have a impact on the Bears just on the possession side. The way I learned football was kind of like based on the college scheme that I used to recruit guys for. He would be what's called an S receiver. That's your possession guy. He's going to go and move the sticks for you, not necessarily going to take the top off the defense.
One more question for you, Montel, before I kick it back over to Jacob. Now, they go out and they get Khalil Herbert and they draft Daz Newsome. Both of them could potentially be special teamers. Both of them could potentially be returners. So who do you think would be more likely to step in? And do you think by doing that, that kind of gives us an indication that maybe Tariq Cohen won't be a punt returner anymore coming off that ACL injury, or maybe they won't use him as much in the return game with these 2 guys? Or do you see either one of them being the punt returner or kick returner?
I really hope they keep Tariq at kick returner just so they can continue to see more value from him. There have been rumors that they might do more receiver things with him now as they get another running back. To me, whenever, based on some research that I've seen over the last year and just some tape, whenever teams, acknowledge him as a receiver and cover him appropriately, he's really been a non-factor. His mismatches out of the backfield as a back, that's where you see the success with Tariq Cohen. So I really hope we get something out of that extension, and part of that should be special teams. I really hope he does continue to play special teams. I don't necessarily know that Herbert and Brown can give and Newsome can give what he gave, but I will say this: I think Herbert's got some burst to him. So does Newsome. Newsome actually did a pretty decent job, I think. I know he returned punts at one time. I don't know if he did kickoff return, but Herbert, I think, does have some upside as well. We'll see what they decide to do, but I think right now Tariq's still the best kick returner. If they want to take him off of that to preserve him for other things within the offense that are going to lead to yards and production, I mean, I can agree to it.
Jacob, I want to talk about Khalil Herbert just a little bit, because that running back room is getting pretty crowded when you think of Tariq Cohen, Damian Williams, David Montgomery. They got Pierce, who they drafted last year. What role, if any, do you think is he going to play in that room? Is he going to be a special teamer? Is he going to be that return guy? Now, mind you, they also lost their kickoff returner in Cordero Patterson. Is that possibly a role that he could slip into? What do you think that he brings to the Bears?
Yeah, I think that Khalil Herbert he'll definitely be in the running in terms of kickoff returns, just depending on where exactly they want to go in that direction. But I think they should give him a shot because he was pretty good in that role at Virginia Tech. He's an athletic guy. I want to say he's more smooth than he is choppy and explosive. I feel like he has good breakaway speed once he gets out and going, but I feel like his real value is just how seamlessly he moves and how he changes direction. He's just a natural athlete who's able to use like those subtle movements in order to evade defenders. And another thing I like about him is he does a really good job of squeezing himself and kind of shrinking to fit through tight windows or tight running lanes rather.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I really like watching him do.
Yep.
I think he's a really good fit in an outside zone running scheme. I think that he has the speed to get to the edge and the one cut quickness needed to, cut inside if need be. And I think we saw it a bit more outside zone, especially near the second half of the year. I think that that's what the Bears might be trending towards. Just watching, because I think Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borom are both pretty good outside zone blockers. So I think that would be a good general fit for them going forward. So, with that in mind, I do think Khalil Herbert isn't going to have the biggest role on offense. I do feel like if Damian Williams makes the roster, I think that he'll eat a little bit into those touches. And David Montgomery, obviously being the bell cow guy for the most part over there. But I do expect him to be in the rotation. I expect him to play some sort of role, maybe a few 100 yards. I could say, I mean, I'm not talking like, 700-800, maybe more so like 200-300 rushing yards, something like that in a season, which, out of a 6th-round rookie is pretty solid. And Damian Williams being on a 1-year deal, you have Khalil Herbert in the long run, ideally, as a guy that you can slowly but surely, continually add into the rotation at the running back position. So I think there'll be a role for him right away. I just don't know how big it's going to be and if that's going to be on offense right away.
All right, guys, I want to talk about Thomas Graham, and I want both of your opinions on this because I think there's a lot of room to elaborate and go into different routes on this. But I'm going to start with you, Montel. Thomas Graham, the cornerback out of Oregon. I want to know, and I think a lot of Bears fans would want to know how he fits into the system, because you think of Desai's system, it's going to be a little more, it might shade a little bit more towards that Vic Fangio ideals or the way that they set up some of the coverages. How does he fit in, and what does that mean for some of the guys that are already on the roster? I'm talking about Kendall Vildor, and then, I mean, you never know if Desmond Trufant's going to stay healthy throughout the entire season. So I was wondering if this kid, if any, is going to bring something. It's a 6th-round pick, so we're not expecting the plug and play. There's your starter, but can he find himself onto the field?
It's possible. I definitely think so. I mean, based on what we've seen from Vildor, based on what we've seen from Shelley as well. I mean, I think from a depth standpoint, he'll get a chance to compete with all those guys. I don't know if he'll get a chance right away to play like meaningful reps. In terms of what I saw from him on tape, I think like some of the good things are just his ability to move laterally. He's fundamentally sound in his pedal. It looks good. Good hip swivel. And he also has really good ball skills. I think that's a guy who, if the ball's thrown his way, he's not dropping. He's going to take and go the other way. Some of the things I didn't necessarily like was you didn't see the long speed. I mean, I know he ran 4.49 at his pro day. Just it didn't really play that way on tape. I don't know if it's a mental thing or something in that realm. And then also I just feel like one thing that I think drew the Bears in was just his toughness to come up in the box and make a play against the run. They love corners that can do that. So I think he will compete. I don't think he'll really play right away unless someone goes down with an injury. But I think that's a good guy to have over the next year to 2 years, continue to develop, let him make a few plays on special teams, see what happens. And I really think they want to take this season as a stress test to evaluate what Vildor has, to evaluate what Shelley has. Shelley's a guy who they've had a couple years now as a UDFA. Where's it going? Are these guys going to develop? Can they play? They both made a couple plays last season. I think you probably wanted more, especially from Vildor being the guy that was drafted. But I think Thomas comes in as kind of like that another guy. All this is going to be about is development. Which guy can beat the other guy, and I think that competition should bring one of those guys to the top.
Jacob, what do you think about Thomas Graham Jr.? Is he a guy that fits into this scheme? Obviously, the Bears think he is, that's the reason they drafted him. But what do you think that? What kind of role can he carve out for himself if he plays to his ability?
Yeah, I think Montel hit the nail on the head there. I think that he did a really good job of describing exactly what Thomas Graham brings to the table. I like him a lot in the slot at the next level. I think he's a really good lateral athlete. I do feel like long speed is somewhat of a concern. I don't think that he plays as fast as he showed at his pro day. But he's an intelligent guy. I think he does a really good job of recognizing route concepts. pretty patient in letting receivers route develop. And I think that he isn't aggressive to the point where he jumps and gets baited on these, subtle double moves, or whether, you're faking in one direction, then you go another. I do feel like Thomas Graham's pretty patient in that regard. And he's a lot of fun to watch. And obviously I'm not going to be the type of guy that says, oh, the Senior Bowl is this end all be all, because it's not. And ultimately, the tape and the metrics are more important than, like an all-star game performance. But I do think that Thomas Graham did a really good job at the Senior Bowl, especially in those one-on-one drills, because let's face it, the reality of that is that those one-on-ones are more so designed to help the wide receiver, because there's no pass rush. You have the whole field to work with. So it's really tough for a cornerback to really stand out. And I think Thomas Graham did exactly that. So that's just what I think he brings to the table. I think he's a pretty, quality player. I like him a lot in the slot. And again, I don't know necessarily how big of a role he'll play on defense. At the very least, I think he'll contribute on special teams. But going forward, I really like that selection, especially in the 6th round.
Now, Bears fans had to wait quite a while before they drafted anyone on the defensive side of the ball. We had to wait 3 days, and into the 6th round. And in the 7th round, they go out and they get Khyiris Tonga, a defensive tackle out of Brigham Young. I don't expect a whole big review from you guys, given the fact that this was their 7th round pick, and he may not even make the roster, given the fact that as soon as the draft was over, they go out and they sign 2 defensive linemen as undrafted free agents. So I was wondering, what do you think the thought process was of going after a D tackle like Tonga, or bringing in some undrafted free agents at defensive tackle? Are the Bears going from a position of luxury here, where whoever they bring in is obviously not going to have to get plugged in or anything? They can learn from some of the best in Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman. Montel, what do you think about, if you have any background on Tonga, and what do you think their thought process is of going D tackle that late in the draft?
I think they wanted to get more depth on the interior. I think they saw this year with when Goldman went, or he opted out. Obviously, they tried moving Nichols over. I think they had a little bit more. They feel like they maybe struggled a little bit more than people saw there. So I think they want to bring someone they can plug in and play there. And I think that's exactly what Tonga can do. I think he's got the lower body strength and explosiveness to hold the point of attack. He's got pretty decent athleticism for a guy that went that late. He's got good burst. He's got strong hands. He can push the pocket a little bit. He's not just someone who can help you against the run. He can give you something against the pass as well. So I think they wanted to get a backup nose with Eddie Goldman, just in case something happens. And I think they got a pretty decent guy for the draft position that they did it with. As far as some things that maybe he didn't necessarily do well, I only saw a couple games of him, but it did look like conditioning was an issue. Didn't take a ton of snaps in a row, so you really wonder, like what kind of shape is he in? What kind of shape will he be in? And then pad level, it was just too high at times. I think the type of strength he was able to generate without using leverage was impressive, but that's going to have to, get developed, in camp. He's got to play lower.
Jacob, what do you think about going after the D tackle? Do you know anything about him? And does this actually give value and depth, or is this just going to be a camp body, do you think?
Yeah, I think that Khyiris Tonga brings a decent amount of value as a depth piece, especially in that nose tackle role. I feel like when I watch Khyiris Tonga, I see him projecting in kind of that John Jenkins or Daniel McCullers type of role that was played this past year for the Bears, because keep in mind that Bilal Nichols had to play a decent amount at nose tackle last year, and he plays a lot better when he's kicked a little bit more outside from that. So with that in mind, I do think that this was, just trying to find some sort of bodies to add up front. I agree with Montel. I think that Tonga brings a lot against the run. I feel like he's a really powerful at the point of attack. He can convert speed to power well, and that's something that I like watching him do. Sack production, maybe not elite, but then again, as a nose tackle, you're not necessarily going to be putting up those fantastic numbers in pass rushing the passer, but he can push the pocket for sure. And just the power he plays within his hands and the ability to, just generate drive in his lower body, I think is really good. Pad level can improve. I definitely agree with that. I feel like he can do a better job of getting low and, maximizing that power that he has in his lower body, because he's built and he's stout. and he's got some very good physical gifts to work with. But I feel like if he can, fine tune some things from a technique perspective, and I don't think he's an elite athlete in space. Montel mentioned conditioning, and I definitely agree with that. I feel like he's not the type of guy that you can put in all 3 downs and, consistently rely on in that regard. But as a rotational guy to play, deep in the interior there, I really like that pick, especially in round 7 when he's a guy that, a lot of people were looking at higher. I saw him as like a, 6th-round kind of guy. So I think that's pretty good value that late in the 7th.
Yeah, and as an overall view, and this is another question for both of you, and I'm going to start with Montel on this one, but when you look at the Bears draft strategy here, and I'm not talking about, moving up for Justin Fields, because I think we could all play Captain Obvious there of why they did that. But but as far as the draft strategy of going the quarterback and then the and then going after 2 tackles and then really waiting on defense to get some depth, or maybe get guys that can be some role players or niche players. What did you think of the Bears' strategy in general, of how they supplemented some of those positions? When you talk about going and getting a running back, where we weren't sure if that was really the direction they were going to go, and then they go out and they get a fun and exciting and a speedster wide receiver. Montel, what did you think about this strategy in general? What does it say about what the direction the Bears are going?
I think the strategy was super intelligent. I think they saw that they were, in just terms of expected points per added per play, they were just very low. Part of that was on quarterback, part of that was offensive line, part of that was just speed at different skill positions, and at times they just didn't have it. At least that combination of speed with actual ability to make plays when the ball came their way, sometimes on a consistent basis. So I think they did an excellent job addressing that with this draft. I tweeted a little bit before the draft, don't be surprised if the Bears double or triple dip on offense. They definitely did. But part of that is supporting A, Andy Dalton right now, B, their young quarterback and Justin Fields they're trying to develop. So you have to do that. You have to build the offensive line. You have to give more young playmakers, because you don't want, Justin Fields time to start and there's no one there but Mooney, to throw the ball to. So I think they did an excellent job as far as where they're going. They believe this defense is still a championship defense. It fell off pretty hard last year. We'll see. I do think the first month of the season or so, they'll be pretty tight because, Sean decides a new defensive coordinator. Teams will have tape on what he's going to want to do. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people, show them some different schemes and looks. They should come out very strong out of the gates the first 6 or so weeks of the season until teams use advanced scouting, start to lock in a little bit. So I guess what I'm saying is this is really supposed to be a stress test for their defense. They invested a lot of money in this defensive line. They invested a lot of money in Eddie Jackson. These guys got to show up. It's obvious they're a little short at corner this year, but if you're strong at safety, if the pass rush is what it's supposed to be, they should at least be above average. And above average with an improved offense, you should be in the mix. So I think what they want to do this year is give all those guys reps. I mentioned Vildor earlier. I think Shelley's going to play. They want to get a good evaluation on these guys over the course of the season. And I think that gives them a good idea of what they need to do the following season. And it could be, you might have to break up the band. Some other highly paid vets might have to leave, but at least what you're missing, what you're going to be letting go of. And I think that's what they want to do. They want to evaluate. They want to see what they have still.
Yeah, Jacob, what do you? Kind of in the same vein. What do you think this strategy means as far as what Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are trying to accomplish here? Because some would say that they're coaching and they're on the hot seat where it's a make or break year. Others say, oh well, if they draft a quarterback, then that means they're safe for at least another 2 years. What do you think this strategy really meant for the direction of the Bears, short term and long term?
I think I'm sorry. Was this
I'll throw it to Jacob and then feel free to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No worries, dude. But yeah, I feel like, and I'm saying this without necessarily any like inside sources or anything or any knowledge about what's actually going on inside Hallis Hall, but I wouldn't say that the Bears drafting a quarterback necessarily means, oh, Ryan Pace is safe. Matt Nagy is safe. I still feel like if they don't necessarily perform very well this year, then their jobs very well could still be on the line. It does give them a little bit of leeway, but I don't think necessarily it's a foregone conclusion that this is going to save their jobs. And I think we saw that with their move up for Tevin Jenkins. I feel like they saw, okay, we have a really good player at a position of need who's also a very good value. And that combination of those 3, you get great value, premier position, because offensive tackle, it's a very important position in the grand scheme of things, and the need. I mean, obviously you don't draft for need, but when you combine all that, and the player you're drafting happens to be of a position that you desperately need, that definitely helps out. So they were willing to part with, that 3rd round pick. And I want to say it was the 5th as well that they parted with as well. So with that in mind, I feel like they're very much looking to win and see immediate results with those 2 picks. But ultimately, I agree with Montel. I feel like, explosiveness, I think, is a, pretty good way to describe a lot of the players that they took on day 3. I feel like Tonga's explosive. Graham is a, good lateral athlete. Khalil Herbert's a very good athlete. Daz Newsome, I think, is a better athlete than what he tested at his pro day. There's a lot to like with this class, and it seems like a lot of people who have, scouted and watched this class are in agreement that they got really good value in a lot of different areas. And a lot of the positions that they targeted are pretty valuable in the grand scheme of things. You're looking at corner, you're looking at wide receiver there on day 3. And, it doesn't help that you added, a space eating nose tackle and, athletic running back in there as well. So, yeah, I'm definitely a fan of what they were able to do, and time will tell if these picks pan out. But I feel like there's a lot to like in place here with their general approach with going, all out with those early picks, and then on day 3 looking for guys who can really add an element of speed and just explosive ability on both sides of the ball.
Agreed. I just had one question going off of that. I really feel like and I've been a huge, Pace critic, but I do think trading up for Justin Fields bought him some time. I really don't think this is a make or break year for him. And that's saying he starts day 1 and things might not go so great. I still think just doing that, I think everything just smelled better all of a sudden. So I really think, if they extended him, he might have bought himself at least another 3 or 4 years. I think Nagy, though, I think he's going to have to show up this year. And I think offensively, they got to look a lot better.
Yeah, and there's that theory that they're going to trot Andy Dalton out there for potentially 3 or 4 games, or maybe 5, 6 games, 7 games, and we're on a 17-game season next year, or game season next year. But there's the theory that he plays half the season, and then you put Justin Fields in week 9, and maybe he starts playing well. There you see some ebbs and flows, and then at the end of the season, you say, "Hey, you can't can us. Look, we just got the young guy in. He's making some plays. You got to give us at least 1 more year with this guy." So that is the possibility, and we know how tight Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are with the McCaskies and Ted Phillips. They like to see each other in the hallways. They like to ride the elevators together. They like to hang out, and the culture that they built that everyone else envies. That Ryan Pace was a big part of that. I'm using, for everyone listening to the audio version, I'm using a lot of the finger quotes here, but sometimes the Bears get that reputation if they're run like a family diner where your brother's the cook and he doesn't know the difference between a peanut butter and jelly and a bowl of chili, but you can't fire him because he's your brother. So there's some of that going on in the Bears organization. But we're not here to bash the front office. We think they did a pretty good job with the draft. But there is one thing that I wanted to ask you guys before we get you out of here. You guys have been looking over all these prospects. You've been breaking them down. And was there anyone that was potentially on the board when the Bears were drafting that you were maybe super high on? You're like, "Oh man, please take this guy. Please take this guy." And you might be happy with who they eventually or ultimately took. But was there anyone that was on the board at the time you're like, "Oh man, I would love if the Bears would have taken this guy"? Jacob, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so one guy in round 7, obviously I'm very happy with Khyiris Tonga and just what he brings to the table. But from just a pure pedigree perspective and what I saw from him on tape, part of me was hoping that they draft Marvin Wilson out of Florida State. Now, look, I do to an extent get why he went undrafted. Medical concerns and just general. I feel like he. I don't know. He started off in such a high light and was being, viewed as a potential first rounder even entering this class, and now falling all the way to being undrafted. I feel like just a lot went wrong there, but I've seen a lot of potential in him, just in his ability to use his hands to, disengage at the point of attack, and his overall. I think his pads were pretty good. That's something I liked watching him, and the strength was also pretty impressive in terms of just how big he was and his ability to, generate a punch at the point of attack. But ultimately, I understand why they went with Khyiris Tonga. I think that, that's a decision I definitely can't bash in any means. I definitely understand it. Even although I do think that Marvin Wilson can play a little bit more outside. Whether it's as a 1-tech or maybe as far back as a 3-tech, I think that gives him a little more upside. Whereas I see Tonga as strictly more of a nose type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, I can't knock that. I definitely understand, going with Tonga in that situation. And I don't have, the medical information that NFL teams do. So I feel like if the Bears looked at that and they said, okay, that's no dice, we're not going to, take a chance on that. I definitely get that. So that was one guy that I was interested in round 7, but ultimately I'm happy with what they came away with.
How about you, Montel?
It's same. I'm happy with what they came away with. I think if I could give them anybody, it would have been Rondale Moore. The Bears have shown this deep need to really like fast guys to use creatively in space. This would have given them the opportunity to take a guy who has a strong history of production at the receiver position, who can take carries if you want him to, who's super athletic, more so than Cordero Patterson, more so than Tariq Cohen. If you really want that guy, go and get a guy, So I really wanted them. I mean, I knew they had a bunch of needs, and it was tough to address them all. But for what they like to do and for the type of fast guy, get them the ball type thing they like to do over the last couple of years on offense, that was the guy. You know what I'm saying? And it really would have been fun to watch him succeed in that offense. So yeah, Rondale Moore is who I would have gave the Bears if they could have taken him. Yep.
All right, guys, before we get you out of here, we're going to give you a chance to let everybody know who's listening to this, where they can find your work, where they can interact with you. Jacob, I'll start with you. How can people see your work? How can they interact with you?
All right, so you guys can follow me on Twitter at JacobInfante24. It's down at the bottom of the screen there. I do stuff over at Windy City Gridiron where I do, just general Bears work as well as NFL draft stuff. And also I do some work with the Draft Wire over at USA Today. That's just general NFL draft stuff as well. So that's where you guys can find me.
Perfect. You can find me on Twitter. My Twitter name's at the bottom of the screen there, at Montel NFL. You can find me on Twitter there. I'll be breaking down some more of the classes, what I think of different teams, basically through my Twitter timeline. And then also, I think either tomorrow or Monday, I'll have an early big board on 2022. So, I'm already starting on the next 360-day event. So, yeah.
The work never stops. Montel Hardy and Jacob Infante. Guys, thank you so much for stopping by the Barroom for this post-draft special. We're definitely going to get in contact and have you on down the line.
Of course. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll be back with more of the post-draft special right after this.
Hey everyone, this is Chuck Arfine, the Southburns Hitmen. This show rocks, and you need to listen to it every single time the podcast drops.
Welcome back to the post-draft special here on the Barroom Network. John Buffone here with you, and we are bringing in Aldo Gandia. We dusted him off, and now he's on screen with us. Aldo, how you doing? The draft is over. How you feel?
I feel great, and it's always fun. I mean, it's Christmas weekend, so to speak, when the draft happens. I was a little disappointed with certain things, but overall, I got to give Ryan Pace a B+. The only reason he doesn't get an A in my book is, as Danny Shimon and I were talking yesterday, I didn't think it was necessary to trade up to get Tevin Jenkins. It seems to be like an annual thing that he trades up and loses draft assets at the top part of, of the draft. And with so many needs, I would have liked to have seen them walk away with 3 starters as opposed to 2 starters. I don't think anybody else that they drafted is going to be starting. I think those guys, most of the guys in day 3 are going to be practice squad players. They'll be fighting for roles, and maybe they'll win a job, but I don't see them contributing right away. For instance, the running back, Khalil Herbert, he is very similar to Kareth White, the 7th round pick from 2 years ago, who was put onto the practice squad, and the Pittsburgh Steelers ended up plucking him out of there. Herbert is probably going to have a similar fate. Hopefully we won't lose him, because he looks like he could be a promising player. Now, Tariq Cohen's ACL injury may not be rehabilitating on schedule, and so perhaps then Khalil Herbert is an insurance policy in case Cohen is not ready to go. But for the most part, I would have liked to have seen, getting back to my original thing, is I would like to have seen that 3rd round pick stay with the Chicago Bears. They could have had somebody like Dylan Randuns instead of Tevin Jenkins in the 2nd round, and then maintain that 3rd round pick where there would have been quality wide receivers, quality cornerbacks that could contribute immediately.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to take a break on beating up Ryan Pace because I do it a lot. I understand. I do it a lot. And I think a lot of Bears fans do, and a lot of Bears hosts on podcasts and shows do. I'm going to try to just – I'm not going to fully get rid of it, because there's plenty of reason to be pissed off. But I'm going to try to ease down on it just a little bit, because I really like this draft class. And actually, on my mock draft, I had them taking Tevin Jenkins in the 1st round. So the fact that they were able to move up and get him in the 2nd round, and obviously you going up and you get Justin Fields, the guy, as far as I'm concerned, Aldo, if Justin Fields turns into what we think he's going to turn into, then the draft was a success. You can talk about the 3, 4, 5 guys after that, but if he pans out, that's really all that matters. I'd rather that 1st round quarterback pan out than your 3rd and 4th or 2nd and 3rd turn into quality starters. Get the damn quarterback, because we've been thirsting for that for 100 years, and they've never seen a 4,000-yard passer. And I heard some analysts saying that if Justin Fields starts day 1, he could already be the first 4,000-yard passer in Bears history as a rookie year. Now, I don't know if I want to go that far yet, because I don't even think he's going to start week 1. I think Andy Dalton will be the starter week 1, unless Fields just completely outperforms him, and there's no other option but to put him in there. And we saw that whenever the Seahawks drafted Russell Wilson, he outplayed Matt Flynn. They didn't care what the contract was. They said, this guy's got to be our starter, or everyone's going to be wondering, what the hell are we doing? So if Fields does completely outplay him at training camp, then yeah. But I like Jenkins, and I think taking care of that quarterback, the line had some questions on the outside. I think we can agree that with Leno there, and then maybe Ifedi being your starting right tackle, that didn't sit well with me. But now you bring in a guy that can possibly start at right tackle from day 1. The inside of the line looks good. And then all of a sudden you have weapons. Well, not all of a sudden, but you have weapons that Justin Fields can have at his disposal. You have A-Rob, you have Mooney, you have Montgomery, you have Cohen. You bring in Damian Williams, you have Cole Kmet, you have Jimmy Graham. All of a sudden, this doesn't sound like a putrid offense anymore. All of a sudden, the line doesn't feel like it's falling apart. So I think that you really, with this draft, we're able to really stabilize that offense on 2 very big areas of need. And if those 2 guys pan out, then for me, it was worth it. Now, I get there are some other holes that need to be filled. And, waiting till the 6th round to get a cornerback, I wasn't so sure about that. Not really going out and addressing edge rusher, which I guess you're going to be happy with Robert Quinn as your starter there. Now they did go out and get I think a really good undrafted free agent in Charles Snowden. He was an edge rusher out of Virginia Tech, 6'6", kind of has that Leonard Floyd kind of frame. Now they're not the same people, but he was a former basketball player. Probably needs to put some weight on his frame. Probably needs to get polished up a little bit. But I think some people were projecting him as a possible 4th round pick that the Bears just got as an undrafted free agent. So I really like that pickup. So overall, I really like this draft, and I think going into it, we had the lowest bar that needed to be overcome. I think that everyone was expecting to be let down, or at least there was a fear of being let down. We were hoping that the Bears were going to make a big move. They made 2 big moves. And I think that they brought in 2 guys that can be mainstays there for the next, hopefully, decade or more from the quarterback position. So I just like this because it looks like they really addressed 2 positions that can stabilize the weak side of this football team, which was the offense. And I think that Daz Newsome was a good pickup because the wide receiver room, I think, in Chicago is going to be fascinating because I'm not sure what the makeup of that's going to look like. Outside of A-Rob and Mooney, who's it going to be? Who is Anthony Miller even going to be on the team? Because I think they still need to rework something. They're still kind of, I don't know if they can sign all their draft picks right now with the amount of cap space they actually have, like $4,000. They can't sign their draft class, so something has to happen soon to clear up some of that cap. Now Anthony Miller, I think, would clear like $2 million. It'd be a kind of a drop in the bucket, but it'd be at least a step in the right direction. And they wouldn't have any dead cap really on their books either. So I don't know if he's gonna. Apparently they tried to trade him, or that was at least the rumor that was going around. Maybe nobody wanted him because they assumed that the Bears were going to drop him anyway, and they could pick him up as a free agent. So it's going to be interesting to see how that wide receiver position plays out. And they got if this Newsome kid's a burner, then we saw what Mooney did. He was a 5th round pick last year. And if this kid's a burner and he can and they say that he's maybe not a natural hands catcher and he's got to work on the dropsies a little bit, get him in front of the jugs machine, have him catch 500 balls a day. And if he's got that speed and he's a yard after catch kind of guy, he's a yak guy. If you get Mooney, who can do a ton of things with the ball in his hands, you got A-Rob, who's one of the best receivers in the league, and all of a sudden you got another guy that can just sizzle down the line. I'm starting to like some of the weapons here. And if Cole Kmet can take that next step, maybe the offense won't be terrible. A lot of that will come down to coaching, which is also a question mark.
Right. One of the things that I think Ryan Pace addressed is he started to identify what the identity of this offense is going to be. And clearly it is a nasty offensive line. These 2 tackles that they drafted are well known for having a nasty disposition. They are, whiskey drinkers who like to brawl and play to the end of the whistle and beyond. They like driving their opponents, the defenders, to the turf, and they carry an attitude. And so it was refreshing to see that there was kind of a coherent plan going on here. You got your quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback. He can do everything from a strategy standpoint that Matt Nagy wants out of his quarterback. And then you've got the offensive line that's going to protect. Hopefully they're going to be solid performers and not just nasty guys, but they're going to protect this young quarterback. And then you've already got a veteran now interior middle of the line. And so you've got Cody White here. You got James Daniels returning, who was having a good season until his unfortunate injury. You've got Sam Mustipher, who I'm really high on. I think he's going to be, hopefully he's doing everything from an athletic standpoint to get stronger, because that was the one a detriment to his play last year, is that he got bull rushed a bit, but he's a very smart player. He is a good leader for that offensive line. And so if you've got those 3 guys, and then you got Jermaine Ifedi played well at the end of the year. Actually, at the beginning of the year, he played well at guard, and at the end of the year, he played well at tackle. When all those injuries hit the rest of the team, he was adversely affected by that and played horribly. But the headline there is that he can play. We saw that he can play. The thing is can he play consistently week in and week out, despite whatever obstacles or impediments will be in his way? So the team's offensive identity has been set. You're absolutely right. The wide receiver depth is an issue, but there are, players there. There is Darnell Mooney and A.A. Rob, as you mentioned, and we've got a pass catching tight end and Jimmy Graham and Cole Kmet. You've got Damian Williams, the kid from Kansas City, as a running back who is very adept at catching passes. So there seems to be a coherent identity being formed for this offense, and that definitely is exciting. We'll just see if the plan comes to fruition.
Well, Aldo, what has been the calling card for this offensive line since they made that run in 2018? That they're soft. The Bears have been the Bears line and the Bears in general have been seen as soft. Literally, I think Chris Long, who was with the Eagles at the time, said that they weren't worried about the Bears because there was at least the offensive line, because they were soft. I don't think that's going to be the issue anymore. These guys look like they chew glass, at least from the demeanor they have. They're not going to walk in and be like, this team is soft. At least even if they're not fundamentally polished going into it, they're going to kick your ass going down. And we saw some of the quotes from Jenkins. He's a guy that I think just likes violence violence within the parameters of the football field. Right. He's a guy that likes being able to enforce his will on guys, and I think the same can be said for Borum. These are guys that really like the physicality of the game. They like imposing their will. They like the contact. They like the aggressiveness. That's something that who has been on the offensive line. Who has been the aggressor? Who has been the outspoken leader of the offensive line in the last year? I mean, Kyle Long has been in and out, but he was been hurt and he hasn't been able. And if you're in the training room, you're not on the field, and it's hard to really be the face of that offensive line if you're not out there. And so, without Kyle Long on there, who has been the guy that has been, okay, guys, let's go bulldoze somebody. Let's get angry. Let's get mean. I'm not saying Whitehair and Daniels aren't good players, and Leno has had his moments, and I'm with you as being excited about Mustipher, but I don't think they had that guy who was just going to say, all right, let's start flossing with barbed wire, fellas, because let's go after it. So I think that they brought in some personalities there that it should at least be a fun training camp, because there's going to be some attitude there. For maybe for the first time, there's going to be some actual attitude on the offensive line that can give it back to Akeem Hicks whenever he starts getting in your face, or some of the other guys on the defensive line said, hey, you're not pushing us around anymore. Right. We're here. We're angry, and we're gonna beat you up just like you're beating us up. Let's go, and let's start cracking some helmets. So I think that, like what you said, drafting for identity. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze things too in depth, but I think bringing some of that attitude onto the line is contagious. So when a James Daniels sees Tevin Jenkins grabbing someone by the face mask, or drive him into the ground, or yelling at somebody after he makes a block, that you're like, oh, I want to do that. That looks fun. Look at his adrenaline. Look at him getting pissed off. You know what? I'm pissed off too. So I like to see that kind of wildfire effect where you can feed off of someone's energy. You can feed off of somebody's aggressiveness. You can feed off of their attitude. So and let's not forget that the most important thing is, can they play? So let's hope that when they're injected into the lineup, he can play. But I just like the idea of having someone like that on your side that you can feed off of.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, too, that Justin Fields strikes me as the kind of player who is going to get that attitude out of his offensive lineman. If you recall, last year with the Cowboys, Andy Dalton had a serious collision, helmet-to-helmet hit that was very dirty, and nobody from the Cowboys offensive line or anyone on the squad went to his defense. And Tevin Jenkins has already let it be known that that's not how he plays. He was asked yesterday, I'll play this soundbite. He was asked yesterday or the day before yesterday, I know it was yesterday. It's been a long weekend. Yeah. About his attitude about keeping the quarterback clean.
That's the number one important thing to me. I don't even care about like anything else to me. The number one thing to me, I've ever grew up my whole life, been offensive lineman my whole life, defensive end, offensive lineman, didn't care about anything else. Number one thing I've always learned is you keep your quarterback clean. and you always keep him upright no matter what you have to do, be dirty, throw, hold, whatever it is, what you got to do. If anybody hits my quarterback after the play, that's my problem and not his. And that's how I want to carry myself, and that's what I want to do, and that's the man I have to be.
I love this guy. I love this guy already.
I want to go into a bar with him.
Yeah, listen, that's I love that attitude, and he's that, and that's not a quote that's manufactured. That's not a quote that is just like, oh, I can't wait to say that. That's him talking, but because that's the first thing that came up into his mind was just like, I know, no, you're not touching my quarterback, and you talked about Fields' quarterback, and I wish I would have looked at the handle of who tweeted this because I saw a very interesting tweet today, and it was in good nature, but it was just like when you look at the attitudes of some of these Bears quarterbacks, Cutler was like, I don't give an F. And then it was like Trubisky was like, oh, shucks, I just want to do a good job and everyone be happy. Fields has that, no, I'm going to take care of my business and we're going to get there. And so it just seems like there's that demeanor that you can tell by how someone kind of talks in a presser or how they address their teammates or how they talk to each other. Whereas this, where we saw some people liked that Cutler, like, I don't care, whatever, don't care. And then Trubisky was a breath of fresh air because he's just like, I just want to help my teammates, just want to be the best, rah 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 rah, and everyone loves Mitch. And then Fields comes in and it's just like, nah, I'm here to take care of business. I'm going to show everybody that I'm a superstar and everyone hop on my back because we're going for a ride kind of thing. It's not like the effort from Jay Cutler. It's more along the lines of let's get this done, so to speak. Yeah. So I like that demeanor where it's just like, we got a job to do. I'm laser focused on it. Let's get to work. And I really like that attitude from the quarterback. I like that attitude. I like the nasty attitude from the big uglies up front, where it's just like, hey, we're gonna take care of the quarterback, and you're not hitting Justin Fields. You're not gonna be cheap with them. And so I kind of like the character of the two guys they drafted in the first and second round.
Yeah, and I think Juan Castillo probably deserves some credit too, because Castillo is a offensive line coach who is always fired up, and I think he wants those nasty offensive linemen. And I think that when he came in last year and he had to work with the Charles Leno's and the Bobby Masseys, who are much more sedate in their attitude. They're not fiery guys. And even, the guys in the interior of the offensive line are not, fiery guys. I think he told Matt Nagy, we need to get some real monsters of the midway into that offensive line. And sometimes just one guy can change the entire demeanor of that offensive line, and it takes more than a coach trying to fire them up. It takes somebody who's in there in the trenches, pushing the opponents around and so forth, and yelling at his own teammates and getting stuff done from a physical standpoint. So kudos to Castillo, kudos to Matt Nagy, kudos to Ryan Pace. For the first time that I've seen in several years, this team is truly building an offensive identity, and I hope we can see some quick results next year, because if so, the defense is still playoff caliber, and if you now have an offense that can average 20, 24, 25 points a game, this defense can hold the opposing offenses to 17 points a game. And so we're talking about some victories, even with the very tough schedule they have. And as for Justin Fields, this Matt Nagy at his press conference today, and we'll have sound bites from that on our shows tomorrow morning, the Barfly Tailgate Show at 10 a.m. Central. And then Danny Shimon and I are going to talk about all these day 3 picks. He's actually right now studying tape of those guys, so he's going to get some thorough evaluation. But we'll also play some sound bites from the Matt Nagy Ryan Pace press conference. And I heard a little bit of it before we came on to do this show. And Nagy talked about how Justin Fields, that they're going to have a plan for Justin Fields that's similar to the Patrick Mahomes plan at Kansas City that they had with him and Alex Smith. But he said that's just going to be the opening blue point. What happens after that, I don't know. So he left the door open. He totally left the door open, which is what he should do, because if Justin Fields shows up to camp and he's more accurate than Dalton, if he's a better leader than Dalton, if he is ready to go and knowing that there's going to be some mistakes as they are for any rookie, but why not get him started more quickly? But if it's better to have Dalton start, maybe even go the entire season like Alex Smith did, then that's fine. But I like the fact that it appears that there's going to be some flexibility with the plan.
And that kind of brings up an interesting question, or maybe something to think about in a couple of weeks or a month or so, is that quarterback room has Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and Justin Fields. We're talking about how the Bears can get to manage their cap a little bit more. I honestly thought that, and we talked about this on the draft show, that that they could potentially try to package Nick Foles with a pick to try to move up around, and basically it'd just be to try to dump Foles' contract. But do you think they go into the season with those three guys in the room? Now, no one expects Nick Foles to get any playing time this year, and it's basically between Andy Dalton and Justin Fields of who's going to be in there. But that's also kind of a drain to have Nick Foles in there, because do you put him on the practice squad? Does he take up a roster spot? So what is going to be the plan moving forward with Nick Foles there?
I think that they are going to let every team in the NFL know Nick Foles is available for trade. And what typically happens is there's an injury during camp. There's an injury in OTAs. There's an injury in August when everybody shows up and they put on the pads for the first time. And so potentially then there's going to be a team calling the Chicago Bears and saying, what do you want from Nick Foles? Now, the question is can they get under the cap and still carry Foles' salary? It would be opportune if they can get a deal done sooner rather than later, but later might yield more in compensation for the trade. So it just kind of depends. I think they're going to do everything possible to get something back from Nick Foles, but I don't expect Nick Foles to be on the opening day roster. I think it'll be Dalton and Fields and who knows, Tyler Bray, maybe.
The most protected quarterback in the NFL. The most protected quarterback ever is Tyler Bray. And you brought up an interesting aspect of this, and I want to go back to it real quick. We talked about the defense still being playoff quality, and I think that that's something that Bears fans have to start understanding, because we've been brainwashed throughout the last 30, 40 years that the only way the Bears are ever going to be good is if they have the absolute best historic defense in the entire league, because we're so used to the offense only being able to score 6 or 9 points, that if the Bears don't have the best defense with all pros at every position, then they're not going to make the playoffs, and it's going to be an absolute waste of a season. If the offense ever starts pulling its weight, then the defense that the Bears have now can win you a Super Bowl. That is a defense that a lot of teams would be really, really happy to have, because you have a lot of playmakers on there. But we have been just so warped in the mind, and we've been told our entire life, or not told, but we've been, led to believe our entire life that if the Bears don't have a historic defense that holds everybody to under 15 points per game, that they suck and the whole team sucks and they're not going anywhere. This is a really good defense. This is a defense with a lot of good players on it. And they may not be 2018. They may not even be 2019 or 2020, but they're still going to be a good defense that gets Eddie Goldman back. And they could be better than last year with Desai at the helm and a new scheme that's more Fangio related. They could be better than last year, but they don't have to be number 1 or 2 in the league. When you look at some of the best teams in the league, they're high on the offensive statistics, and then they're middle of the pack in defense. All you have to do is look at Kansas City's defense. You look at some of the other competing teams' defenses. They're not 2. They're not 1. The Bears can have a really good defense and still make a playoff run if the offense ever starts pulling its weight. And now it seems like they're kind of shading towards that, where they're trying to, like we said, build that identity, build a team that can score 22, 23, 24 points per game, and then the defense can take care of what it takes care of. But it doesn't have to be defense here. I'm trying to get in my window here. Defense here and then offense here.
Yes.
It can even out. It can be like this. It's allowed to be like that. It doesn't have to be defense number 1 in the league and then offense 28. It can be, 10 and 10. And then that's a damn good football team that can make some noise in the playoffs. So I'm hoping that we start seeing that balance a little bit where the offense pulls its weight and the defense keeps doing its thing. And I think that's maybe a reason why, a big reason why they put so much emphasis on offense this year.
That's right. You did some 20 Buffone 55 shows with Alyssa Barbieri, and at the start of every show, you had that little rant where you talked about the defense was out on the field so long because the offense was 3 and out, and then by the end of the season, or by the time the season was halfway done, the defense was just tired and pooped and unable to play at
and injuries.
Exactly.
If you're being trotted out there every 5 minutes or every 3 minutes, you're putting the odds of being hurt are much greater. Like if you're on the field a lot more than you're supposed to be, you're increasing your odds of getting an injury. Not just because you're tired and maybe you're lackadaisical and you get hit, but just for the sheer violence of football. If you're out there more often than you should be, you're in harm's way more, and it's more likely that you will get hurt. So if you're out there for a big drive on defense, and then your offense comes out, they run 2 yards, pass incomplete. All right, fellas, get back out there. And then by week 10, you're like, why is the defense slipping? Oh my God, why is the defense all of a sudden giving up 22 points rather than 17 points? Well, hell, they're out there every 3 minutes. You got to give them a break. And they're getting hurt. This person's getting hurt. This person's getting hurt. This person's banged up and still trying to play. You got to give them a break. And I think that I think that with this offense, they can at least sustain a drive. I know that I'm asking for a lot, but if we can start getting 7 instead of 3, we're gonna go. Then that's when you start turning those close games into wins. You start turning some of those 3-4 point games that you're used to losing. You start winning whenever you're putting 7 on the board rather than 3. Let's hope that going into this year and the years to come, that's the big change that we see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I just pulled up Khalil Mack's snap counts from his career. In his second year in the league, he had over 1,000. And then his first year with Chicago, he missed a couple of games because of injury. So he went down to about 800 snaps and then back up to 1,000 in 2019 and then 900 last year. We want to try to get his snap count to about 800 so that he can be fresh, especially with this offense that they're going to be in every game. And you want Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn, who is in his early 30s, you want those guys fresh so that they are terrorizing quarterbacks in the fourth quarter. And so a lot of that has to, can be possible with the play of the edge rusher that they picked up, Toshu, who I think is an excellent football player and could really steal a lot of snaps from Quinn. And the mid-round draft pick from last year, Gibson, who was somebody that I was really
They traded up for him.
Exactly. So if those guys can provide some productive play off the bench, and we can reduce some of Khalil Mack and Quinn's snaps and have them fresh late in the game, that would be great. And then the other important thing, of course, is we need Jalen Johnson to be healthy and productive for the entire 17-game regular season and playoffs. And we need to see Desmond Trufant play at the caliber that he did when he was with the Detroit Lions 2 years ago, and not the injury-prone player that we have seen the last year and a half.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a game of attrition, and it's always what it's going to come down to. But you want to be able to make sure that, like we said before, you're not putting them in any more enhanced risk than any other person. And if the offense can have some sustainable drives, then there's a real chance. There's reason to be hopeful, and that's something that I probably couldn't have said 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Chubbs says that he heard Matt Nagy at the presser today say we need to have a touchdown to touchdown mentality. I heard that too, Chubbs, right at the beginning of his press conference, and that is great. I mean, Justin Fields presents firepower to this team. And that was one of the things that Mitchell Trubisky was unable to do with this team. His downfield accuracy was terrible. And, I saw a lot of reports when he came out of college that he was a pretty good downfield passer, but I didn't see it. I was able to get my hands on every snap that he had at North Carolina, and I saw a guy whose mechanics were inconsistent. He was, even in college, he had that left hip opening up, the left toe pointing to the left of his target, and his downfield passes were not as accurate as I heard them to be, and which was also one of the reasons why he tended to be more accurate rolling out of the pocket as opposed to being in the pocket and going through the fundamentals. So that's a thing of the past now. Justin Fields has these mechanics. If he can get his processing speed up to a level that is ready for the NFL, because that's apparently the only hurdle he has to overcome because he's got everything else. His Ohio State coach at Nagy at the presser today said that Fields is a generational talent, and that was Nagy's first kind of exposure when he started doing the scouting process. He actually revealed that it was during the middle of the football season that he had a coach. And he had a chat with the Ohio State coach, and the coach said he's a generational talent, and that because Nagy really respects the Ohio State head coach over there, really caught his attention. And then when he had a chance to take a look at tape and finally in the offseason study the tape, he was like, yeah, this guy really is a generational talent. So exciting times. It could it finally be? I mean,
yeah,
I've been following this team since the days of Jack Concanon and Virgil Carter, and then Bobby Douglas, and on and on and on with mediocre quarterbacks. And there was a period of time where we had guys named Kent Nix quarterbacking who looked like a fatter version of me. And so, I've seen a lot of bad quarterback play, and every time we thought perhaps we got the franchise quarterback, whether it was the trade with Rick Meyer, who you own a jersey of, whether it was the trade of Jay Cutler, whether it was the drafting of Trubisky, we thought maybe this is it. Never happened, but maybe now finally it'll happen.
Yeah, and Danny Shimon brought up a point whenever we were doing the draft show on day one. He said, John, you do the post-game show. Do you really want to be talking about Andy Dalton all year? And I told him, I don't want to be talking about Andy Dalton right now, but we are. So I revert back to 2017 whenever they signed Mike Glennon. And I was trying to talk myself into liking the Trubisky pick because I was really not happy with it, and the receipts are on Twitter that I was not happy with the Trubisky pick at all. But as I was talking myself into it, I remember thinking, well, the Bears aren't going to be very good, so if at least it gives something to talk about, or it gives us something to look forward to, seeing if this shiny new toy at quarterback is good. And I feel even that is even magnified greater now because I like this pick. I like this quarterback. And so now it's definitely something to be hopeful for, definitely something to be excited about. And so maybe Andy Dalton does start the year. I would love for Justin Fields to just knock his socks off in training camp, and Nagy says, we have no choice. We got to go with Justin Fields. He really proved it. That would be now. If he doesn't, fine. That's fine. And if he's not ready, he's not ready. I'm not gonna see it as some big loss if Justin Fields is not ready to take the helm of this NFL football team week one. So it is what it is. Now, best case scenario, he is ready. If not, okay, no big deal. They're developing guys. Patrick Mahomes sat out an entire season. So Aaron Rodgers sat out 2, 3, 4 seasons or whatever the hell it was. Yeah. So it is what it is. But there's really a reason to be excited in Chicago because of this pick and because of this kid's character and because of what he could mean to the city and this team around him. There's real potential here.
Yep. Chubbs talks about Justin Fields' learning ability, that in his aptitude test, he was the best out of over 6,000 athletes. And yeah, I mean, that is one of the really cool attributes of Justin Fields. He's a really smart guy. He is a great leader. He's not going to come in here and have a docile attitude about the job. Mitchell Trubisky used to talk about being great, but I think that when you probably had the sound bite of the week here at the Barroom Network when Justin Fields was chosen. You said this finally feels different, and Danny repeated it on that show. And then yesterday when we did a show, Danny repeated it a couple more times. It does feel different because Justin Fields is that generational talent. Let's not forget that at the beginning of the season, there was a debate. Should it be Trevor Lawrence going first or Justin Fields going first? And Justin Fields did absolutely nothing to in his performance to drop all the way down to 11. He still could, as Chubbs and a bunch of other people have said in the chat room, he still could be the absolute best quarterback coming out of this class. Just like Patrick Mahomes was the best, and he was chosen 10th in that draft 2017. So, it does feel different, John, and I'm really excited.
And I'm not trying to base everything on public opinion, but I am so used to whenever the Bears make a move, having my phone blow up with people either showing me the LOL emoji or being like, oh, typical Bears or LOL Bears. It happens all the time. It happened with the Trubisky pick. It happened with the Foles signing. It happened with the Dalton signing. Every time the Bears make a move, my phone blows up and says, what are the Bears doing? I can't believe you follow this team. How can you like this team? Blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you what, my phone blew up 10 times the amount of time it usually does on draft day. Every one of them says, wow, you guys got a steal. Wow, I can't believe Fields fell to you. Wow, I can't believe they pulled it off. And I'm not basing someone's future success on a bunch of people texting me, but that's why it feels different. It feels different because it feels like they got the right guy. They got a guy who can perform. They got a guy who can take this team to the next level. And it's not just another one of these stopgap quarterbacks, or they traded up for a guy one spot and really no one's sure if he's the goods because he doesn't have a lot of tape to put on to go over. So this just feels different. This feels and Danny brought up a great point on day one. Let's just go off a very small sample size. Let's go back to the late 90s. Did you feel this way about Cade McNown? Did you feel this way about Rex Grossman? Did you feel this way about Mitchell Trubisky? And these are all guys that they took in the first round. Right. I didn't. And granted, I was 9 years old when they drafted Cade McNown, but I didn't feel that way about Cade McNown. I certainly didn't feel that way about Rex Grossman. I did not feel that way about Mitchell Trubisky. I do feel that way about Justin Fields. And I have every reason to be skeptical. I have every reason to think that whoever the Bears draft is going to suck or it's not going to work out. But this feels different. This feels a lot different, and I think this is the guy. I feel like this is the guy. Now, we could look back 5 years, roll this tape, Aldo, whenever we're doing this show 5 years from now. I'm like, wow, we're idiots. But I just don't feel that way. I just don't feel that way. I think that this one's different.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance of us saying that. If for some reason things don't work out with Fields, it'll be because of the head coach or because of something else. We won't even go there. But it's going to be, maybe he won't be a Hall of Fame quarterback, but at the very worst, he's going to be a good quarterback. That's how I see this.
What would you do as a Bears fan to say that you have a consistent top 10 quarterback?
Oh my goodness. I could pick a Bears quarterback for my fantasy team and not regret it.
Yeah. Or like you're legitimately putting up top 10 number. Maybe he's the 9th best quarterback or the 8th best quarterback or the 10th best quarterback in the league, but he's going to be there for 10, 15 years. Yep. And you have consistency, stability, and you have leadership there. The Bears haven't had that. The Bears just have not had that.
Yep. Chubb says it's just like Justin Fields said to the press. People have been picking against me my whole life, and you see how that turned out. Pretty cool.
We're picking with him.
Yep, absolutely. I can't wait to see him go to battle. We're going to be covering it. As we announced recently, John Buffone is now head of football programming here at the Barroom Network. So send them all your complaints. He's got great plans for our coverage here at the Barroom Network. I think we've done a pretty good job over the last few years, but boy, under John's leadership now, we're really, really going to take off and do some things that are going to blow your socks off. So John will be letting people know what some of his plans are, and just buckle up because this is going to be pretty cool.
I'm excited. And, like I said before, there is no off season for podcasting. There is no off season for football. We want our content every day of every month of every year. So this is a 365-day news cycle.
There you go. There you go. All right. I will just want to remind people, I'll let you sign off, but I just want to remind people about our schedule for tomorrow. Again, it's the Barfly Tailgate Show. Bobby Bombs and his crew are going to be hosting the show with other barroom show hosts coming in to share their opinions on the draft choices. Guys like Laro Golden, who, by the way, has a show at 11 p.m. tonight, a Bulls 101 show. That's going to be a great show. If you're a Chicago Bulls fan, you should stay tuned for that. They've got 2 guests, so it's going to be a 4-person panel. They're going to be talking about the Chicago Bulls, so it's going to be great. But Laro is going to wake up early and join the Barfly Tailgaters along with several other barroom show hosts. That's at 10 a.m. Central. And then Danny Shinman is going to break down tape of not only these day 3 guys, but also I see people in the chat room listing the names of some of the undrafted free agents. Danny's working right now on finding tape about those guys, and he's going to talk in the only way Danny knows how to talk is the X's and O's and talking technique and all this stuff. I love listening to him. And Neil Stopchinski was going to join us, but they had an event in the family, and so our prayers go out to Neil and his fiance Aubrey. They're attending a wake tomorrow, so he will be unable to be with us tomorrow. So that's what I got. John, it's all yours. Say your goodbyes.
Well, I think you've pretty much taken care of it, but I appreciate everyone who's followed along with the Barroom Network throughout these 3 days, and the content is never going to stop here. So football is an all-year thing here. It's an all-year thing for most fans. So I'm excited to really get the programming keep going, and we're going to see some unique things, some different things, and there's going to be so much to choose from the Barroom Network that you're going to be pretty happy that you stuck around, you subscribed. And we've been doing this for what now, out of 7 years. So we're only going to get better. We're only going to keep expanding. It's going to be a great time. So the draft is not the end of it. The content is just starting. So stick around. Buffone 55 will be back. That's a show that I do with Alyssa Barbieri, and also all the other great programming like Pass the Mic, our show dedicated to the struggles and the triumphs of women in sports media. We're going to pick that back up now that the draft's over. A lot of stuff coming your way. So stick with us right here at the Barroom Network. But that will do it for this post-draft special here on the Barroom Network. For Aldo Gandia, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next time, everybody.